going to work the last question together in the notes, but I want to start out just by pointing out two things that you will not need to know for test one. One we already talked about previously in these notes. You had to find the domain of the function. That's going to come up again later in the semester, so I'll just test it on test 2 or test 3. I'll just give you any domains you need to know for this test. And also this graph. You had a homework question that asked you to sketch a graph. Well, it was multiple choice. I don't know if you remember. It was, and yes, you can use Desmos to graph it, but I'm not going to require you to do that on the test. And I'm not going to require you to find break-even points. You had to do it on the homework, but on the test, I will give you a graph that has these break-even points marked, and I'll actually label what they are. So you don't have to find them. You're not going to spend time or use technology to do that. I'll just give it to you, but you will need to know how to interpret it. Like, you'll need to know that profit is happening in this region because the revenue curve is over the cost curve. When revenue is greater than costs, when you subtract them, you'll have money left over, and that's the profit. That idea you'll need to know. And you'll need to know that that profit is happening between, in this case, it looks like 1,000 earbuds and 7,000 earbuds. Like that kind of interpreting you'll need. And we covered that in class last time, but I will not require you to sketch a graph. I will not require you to calculate break-even points. All that will be given to you. You just have to know how to read it. So I just wanted to say that like right off the bat before we get started today, because I know that made a lot of people nervous on the homework. I did post a video of how to do all those things on Desmos. So if you want to watch the video to see how to do it, great. But like I said, it comes up again. We have a whole test, y'all, on graphing. Test 3 is a graphing test. So it's going to get covered later. I'm not going to worry about it. And while I'm on this page, I'll also say that you will have to provide interpretations for inputs and outputs. And on my math lab, it was multiple choice. And in these notes, to save time, because I thought we would I knew we'd be crunched for time. I didn't realize how much. But in the notes, I provided like a template for you, but that will not be provided on the test. You'll have to do all this on your own. You'll have to write a complete sentence on your own. This was just to kind of speed things up in class so we weren't writing as much. On your test, it talked about at a production level of 2,000 earbuds, and the language I used here, if 2,000 earbuds are made and sold, or, there's lots of correct ways to say something. So if you're curious if your way is correct, you can always email it to me and I can just, take a quick look and give you a thumbs up. But you will have to write an interpretation completely on your own without a template or without multiple choice. So I wanted to point that out too. So any questions about those requirements, having to write your own interpretation and having to read a graph that's provided for you with break-even points provided for you? Oh, Arjana had a question. On this exam right now, I do not have any extra credit because I'm nervous about time. Right now, there are 15 questions on the test, and I think you should totally be able to do it in 1 hour. You'll have the whole hour, 20 minutes, but I'm afraid to put anything extra on it right now. There's a lot of information on test 1. We have limits. We have the 4-step process, which takes a long time. We have marginal analysis. We have the power rule. So there's too much going on right now for this test. So just focus on getting the material correct, and we'll be okay. So deep breaths. You're going to be fine. And just heads up, that was a question I got twice about how much time you will have on the test. Your hour, 20 minutes doesn't start until you open the test in Blackboard. So the time it takes for me to check your camera, check your photo ID, and get you into the breakout room, that doesn't eat into your hour, 20 minutes. So you should have plenty of time to take your test. So deep breaths. Any other questions about me providing the graph and break-even points and you interpreting it, or about having to write your own sentence, there not being a template or there not being multiple choice? Any questions on that? Okay, give me a status just right now. How are you feeling? Sasha says she's okay. Got some happy faces, some sad faces. Okay. I know the first test is always nerve-wracking. You don't know me. You don't know what my tests are like. I promise I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not trying to see how creative you are. Yes, we're going to do the average stuff right now. Oh, I know, Trinity, you're moving. That's stressful. Emma asks, yes. So good question. Just like your take-home test or your practice test, there's like you opened a PDF file and there was like one silly question that you wrote down your answer and scanned. On Thursday, when you open that PDF file, there'll be 15 questions that you can print out and write on the printout. There's plenty of space on the printout for you to write. Or if you don't have a printer, you can just write on your own paper. You don't have to rewrite the questions. You'll just write number 1 and then write your solution really neatly. And number 2, write your solution really neatly and scan it and upload it. So Blackboard is just, I'm using Blackboard to randomly distribute those PDF files to students because there's multiple versions. But you're actually writing on your own paper. And Zach has a question. It depends, Zach. Usually, I don't want to jinx anyone. Usually test 2 is the most challenging for students. I don't want to jinx anyone, just because there is a lot of like interpreting on test 2. Usually test 1 is really bimodal, like students either ace it or they bomb it, but I don't want to plant any seeds. Everything's different and we're online now. So nothing is like, we can't take precedence on the past when we're in this online format now. So, oh yeah, I know. When Arjan has had me before way back in the day, and I normally bring like Hershey Kisses and peppermints and stuff on test day, just, a little sugar to boost your energy or a little peppermint to chill you out, but can't do that virtually. Yeah, but I never want, every test is different for every student. So y'all always surprise me. We'll see how it goes this time. And just heads up, for those of you that had me before, you know how I like always have tests turned back the next class period. That's probably not going to happen. This time I'm going to try so hard to get them graded over the weekend, but it takes so long to grade online, to open every individual file, to change all my settings for the annotate, to like save it and upload it. It's a lot. So I'm going to try to get test graded, but by Tuesday, I don't know. We'll see. And there's like so many different versions. I have to like grade. It takes a lot longer. Okay. James has a question. When we go to print our test, we'll be using some of our 20-minute time limit. Yes, you will, James, but I've also built in a 10-minute grace period. So after that 20 minutes, there's a 10-minute grace period where to account for technical issues, to account for printing, scanning, uploading. So technically you have an hour, 30 minutes since we're in the virtual format and there are technology issues. But I'm like I said, I always write the test where I think it should take you an hour, but you have that extra 20 minutes for like breathing time, checking your answers time. And now there's an extra 10-minute grace period built in for technology issues. Cool. And just right now, before I forget, I know a couple of y'all have a class right after this one. So if that's you, if you'll send me an email to remind me, and I'll make sure I get you in the breakout rooms like first, right away. I'll check your setup, check your ID, all that really early. Plus, I'll be in the classroom early, at least 15 minutes early, hopefully earlier. I have to get my son set up on his computer in the mornings before your class starts, but I'll be here as early as I can so I can be checking those setups and getting you into breakout rooms, especially if you have a class you need to go to after this one. Okay, y'all, so let's jump in and do the math, and then we can talk all about the test, and I'll take any kind of questions you have. So let me pop over here to these average versus marginal. Okay, so average cost, average revenue, average profit. Okay, so this idea, I promise it's not a new concept. It looks scary, but I promise it's not a new concept. So just in general, if you were don't think about this problem, just think about averages in general. If you were gonna average your test grades, if you have 4 test grades in this class and you wanna average your test grades, what do? Someone can type it in the chat or Yeah, so what do you do if you want to find your average test grade? What's the process? Yeah, you add and divide, right? Add them all together and divide. That's right. So that's what we're doing here. We're finding an average where you total everything up, you add everything up, you find a sum or a total, and then you divide by the number of things that got added, right? So if you had 4 test grades, you would add test 1 plus test 2 plus test 3 plus test 4, and you would divide by 4, right? So the way this is going to look in this calculus class or in these formulas you're going to see is they would say like T of X would be some formula that adds up, that totals all your test grades. And then you would divide, if you put 4 test grades in there, you would divide by 4 kind of thing. So that's what this average cost per unit. So an average, when you're dividing it up, it's telling you the average cost per unit or the average revenue per unit. The average profit per unit, because you're dividing it up by the number of units. So let's look at this. The notation we use for average is a little bar above the letter. So average cost, we say bar C. Average revenue, we say bar revenue or bar R. Average profit, there's a bar P, a little bar above it. Okay, and what is this formula telling us? It's telling us C of X, remember that was your total cost? So C of X calculates all the total cost for X items. And then you're just dividing by X items. Isn't that just your normal everyday average? It is. It just looks weird. And then same thing happens with revenue. You have your total revenue divided for X items divided by X items. Then you have your total profit for X items divided by X items. So just your typical everyday average. And then if you wanted to find the marginal average cost, you have to find this formula first, then take the derivative of it. And on your help tools or when you go to MyMathLab, remember they could use the prime for your average, for your marginal, for the derivative, or they might use the other types of notation. But you'll know it's marginal average cost because you'll see the bar above the C. If you see the bar above it, that's average. So if I see the bar above the R, I know that's average. If I see the tick mark there, I know it's marginal. So you're just learning how to read that notation. Okay, so let's just see this in action here. Let's try this problem. I picked one example with cost, but all of the, revenue, profit, all those types of problems will act the same way. You'll interpret them the same way. You'll just change out words. You'll change out revenue or profit instead of cost. But okay, so let's take a look at this one. And all these formulas will be provided for you on the test. You won't have to memorize any of them. You just have to know how to use them. Okay, so let's see what this first one says here. Okay, recall the cost function from the headphone problem. So the one we were doing, I think they were actually earbuds. I think I changed them to earbuds. I was trying to modernize it a little bit. Was it earbuds? I hear a little chime. Yeah, it was earbuds. Okay, let's change that to earbuds because it's the same cost function that we did way at the beginning of the packet. This set of notes was like one big long problem that we just kept building on. So now we're going back to that cost function where there was a fixed cost of $7,000. No matter what, you had to pay those costs. And then there was a variable cost of $2 per earbud. So let me change all these words earbuds to, earbuds. Okay, just so it'll match what we did before. Okay, so then it's asking us to find C bar of 100 and the marginal average cost. So C bar is average cost. The average cost for 100 earbuds. Okay, and then we're going to find the marginal average cost at 100 earbuds. Okay, and in this problem, the more earbuds you produce, the smaller your average cost could be because you're going to be dividing those fixed costs up among more and more and more earbuds. So if you make 200 earbuds, you're going to be dividing up that 7,000 by 200. You're spreading out those fixed costs more. If you make 500 earbuds, you're spreading out the fixed costs even more. There's still going to be these variable costs being tacked on, but you're spreading out those fixed costs over more and more items. That's just the big picture idea here, but if you don't get that, that's okay, because you have these formulas to help you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to find C bar of X in general. And then we're going to plug in X equals 100. So let's do that. Okay, so here's my formula for C bar up here. To find C bar of X, I'm just going to do my total cost function over X. Okay, so let's replace the total cost function right here, total cost function, with this rule. So I'm going to replace this total cost function with the rule. So my rule is 7,000 plus 2x, and all of that gets divided by x. And technically, we found it, and we could stop right here. We could plug in 100, we'll get our answer. But we need to do some algebra on this, because in a minute, we need to find C bar prime of X. And finding the derivative of this is going to be like, whoa, really hard. It does not fit the power rule. Okay, so this does not fit the power rule. So does not fit power rule. So I'm just going to use some algebra to rewrite it. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Just going to use some algebra to rewrite this. So before we find the derivative, I want to make this prettier. Okay, so here we go. Let's make it a little bit prettier. So I'm going to take the binomial and divide each term by x. So I'm going to have 7,000 divided by x plus 2x divided by x. This is just algebra. No calculus has happened yet. We're just using function notation and using algebra here. Okay, and then I'm going to clean this up a little more because it still doesn't fit the power rule. So I need to relocate this x in the denominator up here to the numerator. So that 7,000 is already up there, but when I relocate the x, it originally had an understood 1 exponent on it. So when I relocate it, now my exponent's going to be a -1. Plus, and then over here, these x's actually divide out to 1, right? We know that x can't be 0 in this case because if you were making no headphones, like that wouldn't be a very good business model. So those are safe to go out to divide out to 1 there. And I'm just going to end up with a 2. So what I have is an equivalent version of this average cost rule that's easier to take the derivative of. Okay, and now let's plug in 100 and let's see what we get. So I'm just going to plug 100 in there. And again, you could have plugged 100 into the original format. Okay, let's see what I get. Hmm. 7,100 to the -1 power plus 2. 72? Did anyone else get 72? Positive 72? Yeah? Okay, cool. Okay, and we're going to interpret that in a minute. I'm going to just write one big sentence when I'm all done because see here how our inputs are the same for both C bar and C bar prime. So I'm just going to write one big sentence. You could write 2 individual sentences if you want, but I don't want to do that. Okay, so we have found this first piece right here. We found our C bar of 100. Okay, we found that first piece. And now let's do the marginal. Now, here's the deal. This is where students usually mess up. You cannot just take the derivative of this, because if you do, what's the derivative of a constant 72? What's the derivative of a constant? Always, always, always. 0, right? So you just calculated a cost. Of course, it's going to be a constant. If I took the derivative of that, I would get 0. And that doesn't make sense in this problem. So what we're going to do instead is you have to come back up here to this formula. So you need to use C bar of generic X to find C bar prime of X, then plug in X equals 100. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to rewrite my C bar here since just for teaching purposes. Okay, so I'm going to use just normal everyday power rule to take the derivative of this. So right now I just have C bar notation. It's just a normal function. Now I'm going to write C bar prime because I'm taking the derivative. So let's go ahead and take the derivative of that. I drop my exponent down. Coefficient times exponent, that's negative 7,000. Rewrite my base. -1 minus 1 would bring me to -2. And technically, I'm tacking on the derivative of the base, but the derivative of x is just 1, so we don't need to write that. Later on test 2, the base will be more complicated, but right now my base is just a plain x. So the derivative of a plain x is just 1. And if we multiply by 1, it's not doing anything, but we're planting the seed now. Okay, so here we go. And then, 2 is a constant, so the derivative of a constant is 0, but we don't have to write that. Okay, so there's our average, marginal average formula. Now plug 100 into that. So go ahead and plug 100 in for me. I'm going to shrink everything, and then I'll just take someone's answer. Has anyone gotten an answer for that? Negative 0.7, cool. There's a consensus among 3 people, so I'm going to assume it's right. Okay, so when we put 100 into this formula, it looks like we're getting negative 0.7. Okay, so now we're going to interpret all this, because interpretations are weighted very heavily in this class. You probably noticed that on your take-home quizzes. If you didn't, then if a problem was 10 points, the interpretation was, at least 5 out of the 10 points, if not more. So, computers and apps and all kinds of things can do the calculus for us, but they can't do the interpretation. So that's the important part here for the human side of it. So let's interpret these results. Okay. So when I go to interpret these, I have to address the input, and then I have to address what these outputs are telling me. So let's start with the input. What were we plugging into these functions? What did x represent? X, up here my prompt, x is the number of earbuds produced. So when I go to write my sentence, I'm going to say when 100 earbuds are produced. So let me write that down. Hold on real quick. My app is stuck. There it goes. Okay. So when 100 earbuds are produced, or you could say at a production level of 100 earbuds, that's how MyMathLab worded it. At a production level of 100 earbuds. But the important things I need to see are the units there. So the units for this are earbuds. The units for the inputs are earbuds. Okay, what's happening when 100 earbuds are produced? So let's start over here. Let's interpret just the average cost first. So the average cost per earbud, because remember, an average is per item. So I would say the average cost per earbud, because I divided, in that formula, it's built-in division, right? Per earbud is $72. Damn, that's an expensive earbud. Sorry. Sometimes, the numbers are weird because MyMathLab just generates random numbers in the problems. That's an expensive. Yeah, if your costs are $72 per set of earbuds. You got to really mark that up. Okay, anyway, sorry. But that's only when 100 earbuds are made. So at that production level, if I made 200 earbuds, that cost would go down because I've spread out those costs among more earbuds. If I made 500, if I made 1,000, right now we're just making 100. Okay, so when 100 earbuds are produced, the average cost per earbud is $72. And you can even emphasize $72 per earbud if you want to, but that's kind of double speak. I already said per earbud here, but just to emphasize, it's been divided up. I've divided up the costs. So that's not a total cost. That's just for one earbud. And then what's happening? Well, then your derivative tells you how it's changing. And your units on your derivative, you got to get those right. You have to make it a fraction. The numerator is talking about your output. The denominator is talking about your input. Okay, so we're outputting a cost per item, right? That's what this average cost function is calculating. So here we're doing money. That's our unit. It's a cost per item. And the thing we're inputting into the functions are number of earbuds. So what is this telling me? What is this average marginal cost telling me? It's telling me how my costs are changing over time, and it's a negative. So what's happening to those at that average cost per item? At this production level, if I make more for each additional earbud I make, it's going to decrease my average cost. My costs are going to go down. So let me write that in there. So when 100 earbuds are produced, the average cost per earbud is $72 per earbud, and the cost per earbud is decreasing by, hold on real quick, I'm trying to put that in there, is decreasing by, and I have to change this to money, so that's about 70 cents, by 70 cents per each additional earbud we make. It's over a 1, so that's assuming 1 earbud. So per each additional earbud, or per earbud, however you want to say it. There's lots of right ways to say it. So be careful if you already use the word decreasing, don't put a negative in your number because then you get a double negative. So decreasing is this negative symbol. So decreasing took care of that negative symbol. It's decreasing by 70 cents per each additional earbud we make. Or something like that. I don't know. How are y'all feeling about that? Show me a status so I can see your face. Oh, did I get kicked out? Did I accidentally close?